Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. A fighter that seems to be missing in action, a fighter that we haven't heard all that much from in terms of fight news from the last time we saw her. And the last time we saw her, well, not that many people saw her. I'm talking about Alicia Baumgardner, who was last in action in September of last year opposite the ring Delphine Persoon. Their mandated title fight that ended up going to a purse bid that the Global Combat Collective ended up winning, beating out Matchroom in the process of doing so, but ultimately resulting in a much smaller affair. There weren't even people there. That is, it wasn't open to the public. And I remember that same night, I think Michaela and Sandy had their fight on the ESPN platform, which was a much bigger platform, obviously, than the one that carried Alicia's fight. It took Alycia a long time to return to the ring after that entire fiasco with Christina Linardatu and that positive test, but it wasn't because of the positive test. Alycia wasn't actually suspended. The reason it took her so long to come back was because this Global Combat Collective won the rights to the fight, and it took them a long time to finally put it together. They won the purse bid in March of last year, but they didn't actually put the fight together until way later in September. And it shouldn't have taken that long, not for a fight like that. That if they would have done the fight at Matchroom's price, the fighters would have made a little less, but it would have got done faster, leaving the door open for another fight. Alycia only fought once last year, and that was in September. That was it. If Matchroom would have been at the helm of the promotion, the fight would have got done faster, and she could have had another one. Well, who the hell are the Global Combat Collective, and why did they put in a bid for a Matchroom fighters fight? It's my understanding that the Global Combat Collective is in association with Nelson Lopez Jr., who just so happened to be Alicia's manager, a member of her team. So you can kind of see what happened there. To wrangle a little bit more money, they ended up sacrificing a lot of time and a lot of momentum, because now Alycia has basically fallen out of the public's eye. Where is she? She's still registered as being undisputed at super featherweight. She still has all her belts, though I don't see what fight would keep her there. And I remember hearing that after that Delphine Persoon fight, she would enter free agency, free to go wherever she wants to go. It's my understanding she wanted to move off of Matchroom and go somewhere else. But where? She wants to leave Matchroom. Though leaving Matchroom didn't seem to help Chantel Cameron's momentum or Chantel Cameron's profile. She left Matchroom for Queensberry, but we don't see or hear much from her either. Queensberry's got a couple of female fighters, they do, but they don't push the female fighters as much as Matchroom, and they're not known for it like Matchroom. And because Matchroom does so many shows in so many different parts of the world, that's that many more opportunities for a fighter that's signed to them to get out there in a variety of territories. So even if the money's not everything you want it to be, there are other advantages. Well, it's my understanding that she might be leaving them and going elsewhere in search of greener pastures. Maybe even moving up in weight? I don't see what would keep her at 130 pounds outside of her undisputed status, and that status by itself doesn't guarantee you the biggest bag. There are no other big names there to fight, so a potential move upstairs to lightweight might be in the works. Maybe. So at lightweight, Terry Harper's got the WBO, Beatrice Ferreira's got the IBF. They're both with Matchroom. Caroline Dubois, she's got the WBC, and she's with Boxer. The WBA title is currently vacant, but I expect El Paso's own Stephanie Hahn to pick that one up. And maybe Stephanie Han is someone that Alycia might target because she's not with a major promotional outfit, so it won't be too expensive to get her in the ring. It's a winnable fight.
And that's just an idea. There are a lot of people that might go after Stephanie Han if and when she wins that belt.
Alycia is just one. What the next move is, I've heard this and that. I've heard some rumblings that she may leave Matchroom for MVP.
It's just a rumor, so treat it as such. But that is something I heard.
What's the advantage of leaving Matchroom for MVP? Well, MVP obviously is attached to Jake Paul, who caters to more than just your conventional boxing fan. Quite honestly, he's unconventional, and so is his audience. The advantage is you're not just dealing with your run-of-the-mill boxing fans anymore. There's not a cap on who sees you fight if you go to MVP.
Look at how many people saw Amanda and Katie fight. 60, 75 million on the undercard of the Mike Tyson fight. The advantage is branding and exposure if she were to hypothetically go over there.
The disadvantage, I'd say, is that there's nobody over there to fight, whether you're talking about super feather or lightweight.
Beatrice and Terry are with Matchroom, Carolyn is with Boxer.
You could theoretically work something out with one of those fighters depending on what MVP would be willing to put up to bring them over, and they do pay well, so there is that to consider, but she's definitely lost a considerable amount of time and momentum because she almost isn't mentioned anymore.
There's a lot of stuff going on in the world of women's boxing. Michaela and Sandy are about to run it back. They're about to unify. Natasha and Lauren, they're about to unify.
Clarissa Shields fought a retired basketball player this past weekend, and Katie's about to run it back with Chantel and Amanda.
Do you think Alycia might go over there looking for a Serrano fight?
She might, but I'm pretty sure that Amanda's focused on that Taylor trilogy, as that's the fight that would pay her the best. Common sense.
So speculation anyway. We don't know for sure what Alicia's next move is going to be. All we do know is that she's kind of fallen out of the public eye.
No fight news pending. Nothing imminent. No real rumors of when her next ring appearance is going to be. Just preliminary rumors about where she might end up.
You know, some fighters did benefit from leaving Matchroom and changing their decorum, like, say, Natasha Jonas. But some others didn't.
Like Chantel Cameron. She's another one who's MIA. You just don't hear as much about her. We'll see how leaving Matchroom works out for Alycia, if she does leave.
For MVP?
Just speaking of MVP, boxing insider Rick Lacier took to his social media and stated, "It sounds like Canelo could well be fighting Jake Paul in May. If so, would be a Canelo Promotions MVP and PBC event on Amazon Prime pay-per-view. Location to be announced, but probably Vegas or Dallas."
Words traveled fast. Rick is not the only one reporting this preliminary news and these rumors that Canelo could end up facing Jake in May. Jake has always wanted this fight. I remember he campaigned vigorously for it for years. Now he might get it.
Simultaneously, preliminary reports seem to indicate that an agreement is in place for after Canelo's fight in May to face Terrence Crawford in September at Allegiant Stadium.
Let's sift through this news one story at a time.
Canelo Alvarez versus Jake Paul in May. I didn't think that's who he'd end up with for the May fight, but I have entertained the possibility of that fight in the past because fiscally, it makes too much sense not to do it. For Canelo, the money he stands to make fighting a novice like Jake Paul.
People are gonna criticize him.
When do people not criticize Canelo Alvarez? They criticize him when he unifies, they criticize him when he doesn't. They criticize him night and day. They'll find a reason. But the amount of money he stands to make fighting this guy?
I'm not surprised.
And all I see is Canelo taking advantage of an opportunity that any and every other boxer would take advantage of if it were afforded to them. The chance to box Jake?
For a gigantic bag.
Did you already forget how many professional boxers were calling out Jake Paul not but a few months ago, right after the Tyson fight? Anybody from WBC Bridgerweight champion Kevin Lorena to undisputed light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev.
The Clarissa Shields. She's been talking about fighting Jake Paul for years.
Noel Gavor, back when he still was WBC champion, he said he'd voluntarily defend his title against Jake. Why do you think? So when I see that Canelo Alvarez lands that fight, I just think to myself, don't be too mad at him. He's only capitalizing off an opportunity that any and every other boxer would love to capitalize on. You're just mad that it's him.
You should be used to it by now. When a Tyson Fury fights an MMA guy, and Francis Ngannou and Anthony Joshua follows up, does the same thing.
These kinds of novelty fights have been around for years, and the lines that separate these worlds have been blurred over time. At least according to Rick Glacier, this event would be in association with the PBC, though I don't see what they would bring to the table.
Why are they involved?
Are they involved? I would have expected Netflix to be the broadcaster for this fight, who just broadcasted Jake Paul's fight with Mike Tyson that drew record viewership to their platform. I would have assumed that Netflix would carry the fight, not Amazon Prime.
So maybe that's what the PBC brings to it. A distributor to distribute the pay-per-view. Not that Canelo necessarily needs them to do that. He could go anywhere and find somebody to do that.
I would expect that if Amazon Prime is the distributor of this show, they're going to push this a lot harder than any of that stuff PBC's been putting on. They'll actually promote this and push this between Canelo and Jake.
That is, if Amazon does turn out to be the distributor. I feel like Netflix could be in the running. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Now, there are obviously going to be some people that don't like this, that are not on board, but there will be that many more that are, because watching Jake Paul fight an aged Anderson Silva or an aged Mike Tyson, it ruffled a lot of feathers. If he's in there with Canelo,
people will figure that Canelo's going to knock him out. He's not over the hill. He's not some old man.
I'm just talking about the selling point. I'm just talking about the hook that will draw people in. That if he's in there with Canelo, even though Canelo is smaller, there's a big chance he might knock Jake out. And that's what a lot of people have been wanting to see. Tommy Fury didn't do it. In my opinion, Tommy got a gift. He didn't win that fight.
He may have taken Jake's O, but he didn't take his drawing power. Tommy's been just slugging along, trying to stay relevant ever since, even though he was awarded the decision.
He didn't beat Jake the way he was supposed to. Whereas Canelo, people will figure he can.
That sells the fight.
They both have big followings, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. It's just reality. A lot of people follow Jake Paul and keep up with what he does, and that many more people follow Canelo Alvarez and buy his pay-per-views. For God's sake, he sold over 500,000 with Edgar Berlanga, who everybody knew he was going to beat.
Just imagine how many he can sell with Jake.
This could quite literally be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, boxing event this entire calendar year. It very well could be.
Let's talk about another big boxing event involving Canelo.
Preliminary reports seem to indicate that Canelo versus Crawford will take place at Allegiant Stadium, and I absolutely believe that fight fills that entire place out. I do.
This would theoretically kick off Canelo Alvarez's 3-fight deal with Turkey LL Sheikh.
I don't think this would be bigger than Canelo versus Jake Paul, because Jake Paul's a social media influencer who's more well-known in more different circles than a Terence Crawford. If Terence Crawford is known in any sphere, it's within the boxing sphere.
But this would still be a big fight. It absolutely would still be a big fight, one of the biggest.
So many have raised concerns here in the American boxing scene that too many of the major fights with the major names are being outsourced to a region of the world the common man, the common boxing fan, can't reach. All the way out there in Saudi. Well, this would be right here in the United States.
Are you gonna go?
I've always interpreted such concerns as being disingenuous and questioned whether or not the people raising those concerns are actually trying to go to these shows. Would they if they were in America? Or are you just looking for something to complain about because you don't like the idea that Turkey LL Sheikh is doing for boxing all the things you pretend Al Heyman was gonna do, or Al Heyman is doing?
Just cut the shit. The only guys that really complain about Turkey are Heymanites.
This substrata within the boxing sphere here in America, those are the ones who take issue with Turkey and everything he's doing. But what is he doing besides trying to make the best fights? What?
He's upstaging Al Heyman in the process. That's why they don't like him. He is all the things they pretended Al Heyman was supposed to be.
It's not that they're against the monopoly in the sport of boxing. For God's sake, that was Al Heyman's aim from the very beginning, upon the inception of the PBC. What that was his attempt to monopolize boxing. It just failed miserably.
But it's not that they're against monopolies because they weren't against his.
Another part of the reason they don't like Turkey is because he removes the borders, because he removes the red tape. There are so many fighters out there, mainly PBC guys, that relied on the politics of boxing as refuge. It was something to hide behind for them.
It still is for David Benavidez. You can see he's sandbagging it.
Clear as day. Turkey himself is saying he wants to give you a direct path to the undisputed champion on February 22nd, and all you care about is staying in America and staying in Vegas. I guess that's more important than undisputed.
That's another part of the reason they don't like Turkey, because he removes the alibis, the excuses, anything that could hold up a fight. He removes those obstacles, but so many PBC guys relied on them.
So when I see Terrence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez could land right here in America at Allegiant Stadium, which is accessible to all of these critics and all of these naysayers and all these guys that are supposedly worried the fights are being outsourced to Saudi. This one's in America. Are you gonna go?
It's not like you need a passport.
But then I see who are the ones complaining. It's the Fire Stick Committee. It's the Stream Team. It's the bums who can't cough up the $80 to see the Mexican monster all over the place over David Morrell and his 11 fights.
It's the guys that steal his fights. It's the guys that steal Gervonta Davis's fights while claiming he's the best thing since sliced bread. It's the usual suspects. They're the only ones complaining.
Your complaints are only as relevant as the money you spend, and because you don't spend any money, all of your complaints fall on deaf ears. You don't represent anything.
You're not a metric.
Outside of this digital environment where you can watch any number of David Benavidez videos, podcasters and content creators, because it doesn't cost you nothing. But when push comes to shove and it's time to spend, you ain't relevant.
So complain about Turkey all you like. What difference does it make?
What change can you affect?
None.
This was not about fights being outsourced to Saudi, rendering them inaccessible to Americans.
It was never about
It's
that.
just a bunch of tribalist idiots who look at Al Heyman as being their prodigal father.
Losers.
Still holding out hope that the PBC will turn it all around this year after having done only 5 shows in the last one. Then calling it a narrative whenever I point that out. I don't think you know what the word narrative means.
You just heard somebody else say that and started parakeeting it because you're sheep. You're sheeple.
Trying to use the same jargon that I use, you're trying to reverse Uno card me. It's not gonna work.
Crawford versus Canelo at Allegiant Stadium. A big fight unto itself. Huge!
It'll do numbers because Crawford does have paying customers. He does have fans, and Canelo Alvarez so obviously has fans to fill up that stadium.
I'm excited.
We've got all this news pouring in, and it's only February. We're in only the 2nd month of this year, and already it has the makings of one of the bigger years in the sport.
You're just mad you can't claim Al Heyman did it.
Too bad. So sad.